Yes, yes, yeah. Welcome back to the Klyph Notes podcast, episode 170. Remember, you can check out the podcast everywhere you listen to your podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I used to say Google Podcasts, which I don't think is a thing anymore. But like anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can catch this podcast, man. We're gonna jump right in, man, because I'm really psyched to have an opportunity to chop it up with this cat, who is someone who I have been following for a short time, have become a fan of, and just really feel honored that he's live with me on the podcast. Danny Marang, what's up, man?
Hey, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing really, really good, bro. Yo, so once again, as I was saying before we turned the microphones on, realizing that we are recording this literally in the middle of a day on a Sunday for a dude who works in the sports. Was not thinking about that when I asked to schedule this.
I know it's really easy because I can throw. I've got multiple monitors up. I can throw games up, and I could kind of have it like it's like observed through osmosis, as it
Right.
were.
Right.
I don't have to. That's the thing about sports and football in general. Like you don't have to watch every single second of it. You just gotta take it in. Like it's like medicine, man. As long as you're there, you're good.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, yo, man, like I said, I've become a fan of the work that you've done, but not real. Haven't followed the journey completely all the way through. So you came on my radar a few years back when the Blazers Outsider show popped up. So that was my first time kind of seeing you. But then doing a little bit of research, it looks like actually I was late to the party because you was doing stuff prior to that. So just a little bit of history, like how you got started in covering sports, I guess.
It's actually pretty crazy, and I have a lot of young people who ask like how to get into sports and how to what was my path and where I went to journalism school and those kind of things. I'm like, well, my path is not going to be your path. That's the gist of it. Is like it's not viable. It's just like, and that's the thing is I think covering sports today, there's so many different ways to go about it. The barriers to entry are gone. Like you can just start up a podcast, like, and if you've got the juice, like, and it's great because you don't have these pretentious J school people like holding people back anymore. And not that you don't want people that are trained, but I've seen plenty of people that went to J school who have no business like working in the industry. It's just like, look, man, go cover the news. Like you don't love sports, you don't want to understand it, you don't want to look at it and through a holistic lens, like. And there's room for everyone, but it's also there's people that there's like, oh, I went to Missouri or I went to Syracuse or I went to Northwestern, one of these prestigious J schools, and like that somehow is, means they're better. And it's like, look, man, I know plenty of people that are at the top of the world right now in the sports media world that didn't go to J school, like, or they went to a lesser place. And I think that's kind of, and that's not even like to excuse my story to make mine better. I just think it's a good place that the barriers to entry are gone. Like there's no more gatekeeping in the world.
Yeah.
Well, there's not no more. There's less, I should say.
Yeah.
Mine came about because growing up, I wanted to be a play-by-play announcer. And that was always like, I think the number one thing that I wanted to do. It was really high up there though. I was going to go to business school at high school. And hilariously enough, being a USC guy, I was going to go to Oregon. 9/11 happened, and I enlisted in the Air Force the next day.
Wow.
And after serving overseas, and I worked in military intelligence, where I learned a lot of skills that were supremely helpful in kind of what I do in a day-to-day type life now, even in sports. Obviously, a little less threatening,
right.
But yeah, like I learned how to do analysis, and I learned how to take stock in things and just how to read situations. And it was very, very helpful. And I was super immature as a kid. Not that I'm immature now. I'm just slightly less immature. But it helped me grow so much as a man, as a human, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, however you want to categorize it. That was a huge part of it. But I always had this thing in the back of my head. And so if you're in the military, you know about the Armed Forces Network, AFN. That's how you get your sports when you're overseas. Well, that's how you got your sports when you're overseas, when we didn't have cell phones and stuff like that overseas.
Yeah.
Where you could just turn on your phone and watch a game on YouTube.
Right.
That was not a viable situation in 2003. So Yeah, that was a little bit different. But I went to high school with Ben Golliver, who is the lead basketball writer at the Washington Post.
Okay.
And after I got out, I was talking to him about wanting to do something. And at the time, he was still at Blazers Edge.
Mhm, mhm.
And Blazers Edge was looking for another feature writer. This is like 2010.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know, man, I'm not a writer. And he's like, who cares? Like
Yeah.
you know this and you know basketball, learn how to write. And I was like, okay, cool. So I went in and I was a terrible writer. But Dave Deckard, who's still the managing editor there, gave me the single best piece of advice in media as far as like my product that I've ever gotten. And he was like, stop trying to write how you think people want you to write
Mhm.
and write how you talk.
Mm.
And it completely changed my writing style.
Okay.
Completely changed my writing style. I'm still a bad writer, but now it's more me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's more unique. It's more, you can tell it's me writing it. Right.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, helped elevate my game. And it made me stand out in the crowd.
Mhm.
I wasn't afraid to take a stance on things. I did probably more research than anyone on the planet around the Blazers at that time.
Mhm.
It was at the time when analytics were really pushing to the forefront in the NBA, and I kind of rode that wave as well. And it was like peak blogging period.
Mhm.
So after that, I spent a couple years really cranking out feature after feature after feature. I was doing a couple features a month,
Mhm.
along with like doing like post games and pre games and news and notes and things of that nature that everybody did back in the day. But then I want to say around 2012, 13, end of 2012,
Mhm.
podcasts are still like catching on. Like they
Mhm.
aren't real big. And Dave Deckard and I started doing the Blazers Edge podcast together.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we got it to where it was the number one Blazers podcast in the world.
Okay.
It was huge. As far as, podcasts were at that point in time.
Mhm.
I rode that. I did a couple hundred episodes and I got a lot of reps. And at the same time, down at 620, obviously it's a competitor of mine now, but
Right. Be careful now.
yeah, I know. It's okay. I got friends at every station, man. It is what it is. That's how it works in this industry.
Yeah.
So Andy Bunker and Taylor Danforth were at 620, and Bunker was leaving for Atlanta at the time, and then I think Danforth ended up leaving like shortly thereafter.
Mhm.
Dan Sheldon stepped in, and huge thanks to him. Like they gave me an opportunity to have the co-host job. I ended up not getting it,
Mhm.
but it ended up like it just showed how ready I wasn't.
Mm.
So this was like 2014.
Okay.
I sat in all week,
Mhm.
hosted every show all week
Mhm.
when I got back from Summer League that year
Mhm.
with Dan Sheldon, and I was nervous as hell. And if I went back and listened to those, they would probably sound atrocious.
Yeah.
But they ended up going with Nigel Burton, and it was such a huge probably blessing for me because if had I gotten it, I probably would have just cratered out real fast because I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
But I did more reps, and I did appearances with them, and I did appearances on other radio stations. I was doing news hits at KGW and news hits at Coin, and just kind of wherever people asked me to do stuff.
Mhm.
And then in what was it, fall of 20 or summer of 2017.
Okay.
So I've continued doing the podcast, I've continued doing writing. Like it's just reps, right? And then I get a phone call from NBC Sports Northwest.
Mhm.
Like, hey, do you want to come down and try out for the show? And I was like, TV? Like I got a face for radio. What are we talking about here? But I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I went down there. I recognized a few people in the room,
Mhm.
but otherwise it was people that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And we would do takes, auditions with other people that we didn't know.
Mhm.
And so I did an audition with Shane Brendan, who ended up being one of my co-hosts, and Joe Simons, who ended up being one of my co-hosts.
Mhm.
And the chemistry was immaculate
Yeah.
out of the gate.
Yeah.
I'll never forget Shane and he told me he's a comedian. I'm like, look, man, I can do the basketball thing. I can't do the comedy thing. Like, I can be a smartass. And I go, what if we just compared every Trailblazers player to the Lord of the Rings character?
Oh my god.
And he was like, that's so stupid. I love it.
Right, right.
And so we went in and made an ass of ourselves in this 7-minute cut,
Uh-huh.
and it killed.
Yeah.
It killed. And then Joe was so good and so professional as a host, he just set me up to do basketball stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very evident right out of the gate that the three of us just we just clicked.
Mm-hmm.
What's funny is the original part of the show was it was supposed to be a rotating show, or it'd be like Shane and I one show, and Joe and I one show, and then Joe and Shane one show, and we did a couple like cold runs, and we all three of us went into the GM's office and said we all need to do the show together.
Okay.
And so we did the show together, and it was just so different, and it was great. Like, you know, it's still Joe always brings this up. It's so cool that even a couple years later, somebody will see us somewhere, see one of us somewhere, and be like, "Man, I miss Outsiders. Bring it back. Bring it." It's like it made such a deep connection with fans. It's like it's still one of the coolest things ever. But you know, that led to what, 4 years. We had Joe and I did the math one time. It was like 540 episodes.
Wow.
So what you start thinking about, it's like, that's a lot of TV, man.
No, yeah.
So, and then obviously the show ended when the Trailblazers went a different way with the TV network. They left NBC Sports Northwest and went to Root Sports, and we tried to revive it with Root. Root just wasn't about that life.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the way that the cookie crumbles in this industry. But during COVID, I lost a gig at a very big company that I was supposed to start March 17th, 2020.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was a little scary. I ended up working at a grocery store for about 2 months while I was looking for another job. We weren't in any trouble or anything like that, but it was like one of those things like, I don't know how long this is going to last, so I got to make sure there's some money coming in somewhere.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a job at a manufacturing place. Hilariously, you know Juanita's tortilla chips?
Yes.
Okay, so the company I was working for, they are the company that makes the fryers that makes the tortilla chips. Like, they're 40-foot long fryers. Crazy. When I told you my path was unique,
right,
trust me, bro. Right. So I ended up being the logistics director for this manufacturing. It's an international manufacturing company out of Australia.
Okay.
But I had a friend there who was the HR director. And I didn't know this at the time. I just blind sent in a resume. I'm like, oh, they needed a logistics director. I could fill in there. I got a call 30 seconds later. It's a friend of mine from high school. She's like, do you want the job? She goes, you're overqualified. We'll hire you on the spot.
Right.
And I was like, I'm working in a grocery store during COVID. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take that job. You know?
Yeah.
I'm about to kill somebody in this grocery store. Somebody looks at me sideways again.
Right.
You know? So I took that, and I'm still doing the TV show, or we're on hiatus because of COVID.
Right.
We come back, and my boss was so supportive. He was a huge Blazers fan. He knew who I was beforehand. As far as like Blazers Outsiders. And so he, like, there was, like, you know, we'd have early games. He'd be like, yeah, go do the TV show. Like, he was so supportive and so helpful in it. And I told him when I took the job, like, look, the only thing I would leave you guys for, like, right now is if somebody came and offered me like a full-time radio gig.
Right.
And Brandon Sprague invited me in to co-host with him one morning. This was in 2022, and late fall, early winter, somewhere right around there. And co-host the morning show with him, and his boss, who's now my boss, Jeff Austin, was in there. And I go, hey, Jeff, you know, we haven't met, we've talked before, but I just want to let you know, if you have an opening anytime, here's my number. And it wasn't my phone number. It was like, this is how much it would cost. I shot my shot. I said, I go, if you guys can get to this number, there will be no haggling. There will be no back and forth. I will sign. And he kind of looked at me and smiled. He's like, okay. He's like, I'll keep that in mind.
Right.
And AJ McCord left Dusty a couple months later, and he made the call, and he goes, we'd love to bring you in. So I came in, you know, went through the interview process, and he said, we can get that number.
Wow.
Said, okay. And like, it was just perfect.
Yeah.
So that's how we did that, and that was 2 years ago now.
Hmm.
Dusty and I, we had our first show together July 1st, 2022.
Okay.
So
Okay. Yo, congratulations, bro. That's so crazy. Well, it's interesting to hear you tell the story because I think anyone who listens to specifically the podcast, I think
mhm.
you get a sense of your path. One of the things that I so appreciate about listening to you is what you I think made reference to when you said you were given the counsel of when you were writing, just writing your own voice.
Mhm.
I feel like that's one of the things that comes across. Um, whether you consider yourself or not, in my eyes, I feel like you are a journalist now. Whether it,
I'm media whether I want it or not. Like,
right?
look, I'm writing, I'm doing TV, and I'm doing radio. It's like,
Mhm.
you know,
You're definitely
uh,
in that position for sure.
yeah, it is. And I've had people tell me it's like, Sean Hyken, who does the Rose Garden Report. Sean and I are the only guys outside of Casey Holdall and Brooke Olsendam, the Blazers staff,
Yeah.
who were at every single game.
Right.
And so it's like I have become what used to be a thing, which was the radio beat reporter.
Mhm.
There was like a guy from the radio station that was at every game, kind of a deal.
Mhm.
And the only other guy I know who does that in the NBA, at least,
Mhm.
is Chris Vernon, who's down in Memphis.
Okay. Okay.
But other than that, like, it's always funny when I get people come to town from other cities for their media, and they're always like, it's weird seeing a radio guy here,
Yeah.
because I'm like, because there's just not many of us that are at these games.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's kind of a sidetrack, but working the 12 to 3 slot
Uh-huh.
as a radio host is by far the best slot on the planet. Like, it's not the most preeminent like drive time slot as far as like visibility,
Uh-huh.
but it allows me to do everything. Like, I can
Word.
go to morning events, I can go to evening events. Like, the only thing I can't go to are practices sometimes because I'm on air. But other than that, it's like it's so perfect because I can go to every game and I get home at like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
So I don't have to get up. Like, Sprague gets up at 4:15, man. I'm like, no,
Right. Right.
no, dog. There is a 0% chance of that happening.
Yeah.
Like, so I get home. I get home at 1, which means I get to sleep about 2:30,
Yeah.
and it's like I get up about 8:30 and go do my show. It's like it's perfect. It's such, and that's the other thing is like I have like the perfect place to do this. And my co-host Dusty
Mhm.
does the exact same thing with Ducks football because he's the Ducks sideline reporter.
Yeah.
So it's so perfect. And I would not like it was like, well, what if you could get more exposure, maybe get a bit more money? I'm like, no,
Yeah.
because the time slot just works so perfectly.
Yeah. Well, it feels like you've really you found your lane. I mean, this is me speaking to you, having met you just a couple
Mm,
times at a Blazers game, but then, when you're in the position that you're in,
yeah.
people feel like they know you because we get to hear from you so much. We get to hear your stories, we get to hear your voice. But it really feels like you found your lane. Like this works for you and what you
Mm.
what you have to offer in terms of providing for us as listeners and fans of sports and what we're looking for.
No, and I appreciate that, man. It's always awesome to hear that because it's one of those things where in this particular world, in the sports media world, there's always like, do you want more?
Mhm.
Everybody's always trying to climb to the next level, and it's not that I don't have ambitions, that I don't want to do more, that I don't want to have like my own little empire and make more money, all those kind of things. But I'm happy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy where I'm at. Like, I don't say this jokingly. Since I have gotten the radio gig, there has not been a single day where I've gotten up and been like, I don't want to go to work.
That's lovely.
Like, and it's so like, look, I don't make as much money as I used to. I used to make really good money as a business analyst. Like,
Mhm.
and that was the trade off. I worked, that's what I didn't say when I was started at Blazers Edge.
Mhm.
I worked as a private contractor as a business analyst for almost 10 years.
Okay.
And I worked for basically some of the biggest companies in the country.
Mhm.
And I made really good money, but I was working 10, 12, 14-hour days, just burning and burning and burning every single day. And I made all this money. And what would happen was I would work like a 10-month contract, 12-month contract.
Mhm.
And then I would take 2 months off and I'd go on vacation because I was so burnt out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd go to Italy, I'd go to Croatia, I'd go to England, I'd go to Spain, I'd go on a kick-ass vacation,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But it was like, because it was one, because I wanted to, but two, because I had to.
Yeah.
Like, I was just so cooked. I
Yeah.
was like, I was good at what I did, but it was also like, it was just eating me up. And it got to the point where like, I can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I can keep doing this. Like, I'm happy every single day. You know, if certain opportunities come my way that I can expand on,
Mhm.
awesome. And like it's kind of the path that I've kind of gone down with doing the podcast and doing the Patreon. It's like, all right, let's take on a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more here. Let's do a little bit more there.
Mhm.
And you start looking at, not to get into the numbers, but like when you start doing enough numbers, like
Mhm.
the money starts to add up real quick, and you kind of go, oh, okay, I guess people do care.
Yeah.
And that's when it's kind of a cycle that reinforces itself of like,
Mhm.
I'm doing the right thing, so to speak.
Mhm.
The you know, the scary part of it is this stuff isn't guaranteed.
Mhm.
And one day it could all be gone. Like that's the difference between like working as, a 9 to 5er where you do have more certainty.
Mhm.
I'm on a contract. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean they'd have to pay me out the rest of my contract, but doesn't mean that, I can go get a job immediately, because
Right.
doing this job, there's only so many of these jobs in the market.
Right.
And if I want this job in this market, you know, how does that go for me? So it's there's certain checks and balances to everything for
Mhm.
sure,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No doubt. I mean, and it's obvious that you're passionate about it. So, that old cliche, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life, right? Like
It,
there's so much truth to it.
oh, dude, there's you hear that so often. You hear that so often, but when it finally happens, if it happens, because it doesn't happen for everybody.
Right.
Not everybody gets, and that's why I tell everybody, I'm like, you will not hear me complain about my job,
Yeah.
because I know what the other side looks like. It
Yeah.
was, the old line, the world needs ditch diggers too, but it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I did that in the military, guys. Like,
Check that off.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I know what that life is. I don't need that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
it's like I said, it's just a blessing. Like,
yeah.
like that phrase is tossed around so often, and I
Mhm.
think people kind of roll their eyes at it, but
Mhm.
it genuinely is. It's so crazy that you're just like, I get to do this every day,
Mhm.
and it's like that's God. I'm gonna sound like a cornball, but sign on the wall kind of a deal. Live, laugh, love. But like, I literally wake up every morning like, all right, let's go.
Yeah.
Like it's it's such a stark difference to any other job I've ever had in my entire life.
No doubt. No doubt. And again, it definitely shows. It's funny that my favorite podcast that covered the Trailblazers was Rip City Report.
Mhm.
And I was, man, when everything happened, and I appreciated how they explained, what the Oregonian wanted to do and this, that, and the third, and it had to go away. Man, I was so bummed. And so,
Mhm.
definitely, I was just listening to today. I was just listening to Blazers Balcony. So I love what Casey and Brooke do.
Yeah.
I listened to the Briefcase. There's some other podcasts that I listen to, man, but I'm not just blowing smoke, bro. When I get the alert that you drop a new one, I'm like, all right, let's go. Because and this is one of the things that, I hit y'all on social. I was like, dang, I was so it was and I appreciate Brandon really broke it down. Like you said, man, dude got to get up early in the morning. He shared like he's got daddy duty and this, that, and the
He's
third.
coaching like three different things.
That's
Like
so nuts, yo.
it is. It's so funny because like he called me like so nervous
Mhm.
when he was going. Like, why would you be? It's me, dude. Like, well, you knew the exact thing that I was going to tell you was go.
Mhm.
Go,
But
dude. Like,
bro,
but he was it legitimately, it was so hard for him to do it. But it's like,
yeah.
you know,
He talked about that's one of the things that I thought was so dope.
yeah.
If y'all haven't listened to that episode of Jacked Ramsays, man, you gotta go listen to that one because he breaks it down. He said, what'd he say? He was like practicing, like rehearsing the call
Yeah.
before he even got on with you, like how he was feeling so nervous. And I thought, man, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. The chemistry that I feel like Joe and Casey had. I feel like you and Brandon had that chemistry
Mhm.
because both of you folks obviously cover sports, but you both bounced off each other so
Yeah.
well. Neither one of you guys were just yes man and agreeing. And
Mhm.
I think that creates such an interesting conversation when people are listening that they get to hear, just two different ideas about the content that you guys are bringing. And I think that was so great.
It was, and Brandon will come back occasionally when he can.
Mhm.
I think I'm gonna probably have a couple guests come through and rotate through, and I'm still kind of figuring out how I want to do it and what we're gonna do for the season or how it's gonna shake out. Just there's a lot of things to sort out, but yeah, if Brandon, what's funny is when I started the podcast, I started it as a solo venture,
Mhm.
and I figured I'd just have some guests come through, and then I was talking to Brandon one morning, and I was like, "What would you think about doing this?"
Mhm.
And he's like, I've been kind of wanting to talk some Blazers. And I'm like, come through. We'll do a couple shows together and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Then we'll go from there.
Yeah.
And we know we were already friends, and we already had a relationship, but it just got stronger.
Yeah.
And I've been so lucky to have both Brandon and Joe Simons, because they have taught me so much about hosting and how to bounce things off, because I don't think people really realize this, but you have a 1 and a 2 chair when you're doing a radio show, or you're doing a TV show, and you have your host and you have your analyst. I'm more analyst. Like that's my role. I can be a host. I host a radio show every day with Dusty. And I don't know if people actually catch on to this. Dusty hosts the first half of the show. I host the second half of the show on the radio. That's
interesting.
And we do that just so one person isn't always setting up the other.
Yeah.
So that way we actually we know that we're going into things, like one person will be setting the other one up in the other half of the show. And so we kind of structure the show that way. It makes it a little bit different that way. And you also, as the host, you have to, I think, carry more burden.
Yeah.
And so when we split those duties, it makes it easier.
Yeah. Yeah.
And doing TV, you can't really do that. But Joe was and is so good at it, and I hate him for it, because he's so good at it. He could roll out of bed and be the best host in Portland.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating how good he is at it. He just flips a switch and he just turns into the Joe Simons 2.0 bot, and it just hosts his butt off. And it's like, you monster. He's just naturally talented, and he's got this voice, and it's like, all right, dude, enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brandon's different though. It's not that he's not naturally talented, because he is, but it's much more conversational, which feeds into the podcast part of it with me so well. And that was one thing he was always so good about keeping things moving and like adding where it needed to be added, and not taking away where it needed to be. And I always, that's what was so selfishly what I loved about having him be on the show.
Yeah.
Is that he could both set me up, and I could set him up, like, oh, what do you think about this? And he would go down his, and he'd have his pushback. So he just had that ability to just kind of to walk through both.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so dope that you're going to continue to bring him back. You know, it's funny. I was thinking about something, thinking about getting to talk to you today. And now that you're on the radio, so I do a 2-hour radio show, but it's music based. Right. And so I'm playing records. I'll do interviews. You know, I may do an interview somebody for like 20 minutes, but I'm talking to someone. Other than that, I'm just doing like little 10 minutes of on the mic, and I'm just playing records.
Yeah.
Bro, you got to talk for 3 hours on the radio. Dude. Like, come on, man. I don't know if I got 3 hours. You know what I'm saying?
Bro, here, look.
5 days a week, yo.
This is what I will tell everybody. For people who love me, people who hate me, and everyone in between.
Yeah.
This is where I'm going to sound obnoxious, and I don't care. If you could do my job, you'd be doing it.
Come on.
You can't.
Come on. Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
Because doing 3 hours every single day, it was like, oh, you only work 3 hours. Talk for an hour straight. I dare you. I dare you. I dare you.
People don't get it.
I dare you. Now do 2. Now do 3. Now to be funny. Now be engaging. Now have all the energy in the world, and also know what you're talking about. It's the greatest job in the world.
Yeah.
But not everybody can do it, because it requires certain things. You have to be quick-witted. You have to be engaging. You have to be smart. You have to be funny. You have to have all these different emotional skills that you can call on.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm the greatest person in the world. There's so many radio hosts who are so much better than me. My God, I'm the bottom of the barrel. But like, for everyone who's like, oh, I could do it. One of these, I have told my boss, I'm like, for all the people who say I could do this, I want to put them on a mic. Just throw them in. Just, here you go. Throw them in there and watch them stew.
1,000%, bro.
Because you've seen people when they get on the mic for the very first time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And it's
and I'm talking about people who, like, I've seen rock stages, you know, do their thing, like when they're in their element. You put a microphone in front of them in the studio, and like,
everything changes.
That's where you have to be good at what you do and bringing that out of them, like making them feel comfortable. So no, I feel you, bro.
So that was the biggest change for me for doing radio full time.
Yeah.
Was like, first couple of weeks, I was like, whew. I was getting home. I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Like, and you get done with every show, and it's both good and bad. I've got an hour plus drive because the studio's in the Pearl, and I live in Newburgh.
So crazy to me, B.
Bro, look, man, I moved out to Newburgh before I got the radio show during COVID. Okay, I got the radio show like 6 months later.
Oh my gosh!
Had I known,
Right.
Had I known,
Yeah. But you know what? You ain't lying. That hour drive, and my 9 to 5 is in healthcare, and I work about an hour from home, and so I get it, man. That hour drive, it allows you to decompress and reset before you get to the house. So I get it.
And that's it's actually kind of a blessing in disguise. I get frustrated because I get stuck in traffic, but it is like because I've got a big old thing of water. I drink one every day, and then I have some in the car, and I'll just pound water and kind of replenish and refresh on the way home. And then I get home, my wife will look at me like, "Hey, what are you going to do?" And it's usually one of two things. It's either go to the gym or take a nap.
Yeah.
It's like there's a two-pronged path.
Right.
It doesn't usually stray one way or the other. If it was one of those days where it's like, hey, I was up till 3:30 in the morning writing, and I got up at 7, and then I went and got prepped and went, worked out, did the show, then came home. I'm probably gonna go take a nap, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But it's again, I would never ever ever complain about working on the radio.
No doubt.
But I want people to be aware that talking for 3 hours every day is not taxing in the way that you think it is. But if I invited you in to do a 3-hour show and you did every segment, by the end of it, you would want to curl up in a ball and sleep for the rest of the day.
Yeah, it's mentally and emotionally exhausting.
And that's the thing is like, and it gets quote unquote physically taxing when you do it for weeks and you're just sitting and sitting and sitting. Like if you ever watch the show on YouTube, you'll see me stand up and like go and stretch and do push-ups and like just do stuff in the studio to like move, because you sit in this stupid chair curled over this microphone like this for 3 hours. You start getting the Sasquatch or the Shrek neck.
Right.
It's like, oh no, you can't have that, dude.
Smart man. Definitely smart man. Okay. So, like I said, thank you so much for sharing the story, because very, very interesting to me to know people's journey, and then to hopefully allow other people to hear the journey as well. But it would be dumb of me to have you on here and not dive into a bunch of sports questions.
Oh yeah, let's go, man.
So one of the things that as I said, it's so cool to listen to the podcast because I feel like your personality definitely comes through. And let me say this too. Sometimes I wonder when people are in positions, when they're entertainers, if they have a stage, whatever the case may be, where they have an audience, I wonder if people recognize the impact, like if it even resonates with you, the impact that you have on, hundreds, sometimes thousands of people or more. And I say that because, like I said, I've met you, I think, twice. So DJ OG1 is the homie. And, and when I've gone to games with OG and I've seen you, like the last time, I think maybe it was the first time, I was like, yo, Danny, what's up? And Klyph, he was like, hey, what's up, man? Like, dap me up. Like, like I was the homie. And I definitely appreciate that because I know who you are because I listen to you all the time. But you, bro, in no way do you have the I'm Danny Marang sort of persona. You know what I mean?
I don't ever want to be that guy. Anybody who's ever come up to me who, if you've ever seen me anywhere, come say hi. Like people think I'm pretentious or I'm an ass. Like I'm a smart ass. That's and the thing is, like, for radio, for the pod, for TV, it's probably tuned up 15-20% because you have to be a bit of a character. Like the part of doing this is entertainment, right?
Yeah.
And so do I turn it up a little bit? Yeah, I do. I lean into it. There'll be times when I'll do a segment and I'll go on a rant on the radio, and we'll go to a commercial, and Dusty will be dying laughing because he knows he goes, oh, he's digging his heels in, and then he'll realize it and he'll keep poking because he's like, oh, this is perfect,
Yeah.
But it's almost all entirely me.
Yeah.
Because it's like you have to be you, and if you're not you, you can't fake the funk, man. And that's the thing. It's like, because if you try, eventually you're just going to wear out.
Yes. Yeah. You're going to run out after a while.
And it's like, you can't fake that. And that's what, like, when I say, like, I never had a bad day or never wanted to get up doing the radio because I'm just me.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, you don't actually think that, or you don't believe this. And it's like, brother, if I didn't believe it, like, unless I'm obviously joking, if I didn't believe it, I wouldn't say it.
Yeah.
It's like, otherwise I'd go another way with it. And people are like, oh, well, you really think that? I'm like, yes. Like, And as far as like, it's the craziest thing for me was when I first started really looking at podcast metrics,
Mhm.
and I realized the Blazers Edge podcast was as big as it was,
Mhm.
thousands upon thousands of downloads a week. And I was like, holy crap. And then, I started Jacked Ramsays from scratch.
Mhm.
With a zero on the podcast downloads, a brand new feed.
Yeah.
And when I saw it doing 5, 6, 7, 10, 12,000 downloads, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
People are listening, bro. They pick.
Like this. And I was just like, it reinforced, because I there's been multiple times when other media entities have asked me if I wanted a job. And I was
Mhm.
like, absolutely.
Mhm.
And we talk, and then nothing happened. And I was 37, almost 38 years old. And I'm sitting there going, I don't think this is ever going to happen.
Mm.
And I told my wife, I'm like, I think I'm just going to pack it up. I'll continue doing the podcast and, whatever stuff kind of comes along my way. And it's a TV show, because this is right when the Blazers left NBC.
Okay.
I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, kind of deal. I don't know if I'm going to get a radio gig. I don't know what's going on with TV, because it's a new TV provider, blah, blah, blah. So this is 2021. So,
Mhm.
and it was, not that long after that I get the phone call from 1080.
Yes.
It was like, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this.
There you go.
And that was like, because I literally told my wife, I'm like, I think that's it. I think that's it. It's been a fun run. And if I could tell, my kids someday, like, yeah, no, your dad used to co-host the pre and post game show for the Trailblazers. And yeah, I've done radio, and yeah, I've done TV. And it was just something, that would be like, hey, yeah, if you ever want to see it, your dad was cool once, kind of a deal, That was where I was with it. I was like, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I'm trying to hold on to this gig long enough so that I can have my kid can, when we have one,
Mhm.
Can be like, yeah, no, my dad's a radio host.
That's what's up.
Because it just seems like that'd be a cool thing to tell your friends when you're a kid.
1,000%.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's why I was like, I want my kid to be like, yeah, that's my dad.
Mhm.
And that's like the main motivation for stuff now. Like, as I get older, because I'm 40 here in 3 weeks. So
Mhm.
it's like,
You a young man.
I'm melting down.
Nah, bro,
So
you a young man. You a young man. Okay. So I'm gonna just throw some stuff at you, bro.
yeah, let's go.
WNBA coming to Portland.
Yeah, man, it's so great to actually see it actually happen.
Mhm.
It hit a snag last year with a different ownership group. I've been talking to a lot of kind of like, the movers and shakers around Portland, because they've got their nose up, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
What's going on over here? And as much as I'm excited about the WNBA,
Mhm.
the Bethal family,
Mhm.
the family that's going to own the WNBA team, that owns the Thorns family, they are kind of like the new it family in Portland, and it feels like there's a vacuum there, and like the Allen estate is the caretaker of the Trailblazers, but I don't think Jody is as invested in being here long term, right? Because they're eventually going to sell the Trailblazers, and it feels like the Bethal family might end up kind of being the first family of Portland.
Huh.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, you have those civic leaders
Yeah.
that invest in the community, and they're making their money. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it was really interesting. I was watching them after the WNBA announcement. I was down there for the press conference, and they had like a block party.
Mhm.
And Lisa and Alex, their brother and sister, Bethal, they are the owners of the WNBA team. They were out there shaking hands, kissing babies,
Oh, that's
like in the crowd.
That's what's
And
up.
it didn't feel fake. Like, it felt like they were like, they get it from an ownership perspective, from a community perspective, from a civic service perspective. Like, they own it wholly. And there was something about that. It's like, yeah, having those kind of people, like, look, and this is going to sound weird, but it's good to have billionaires in your community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they provide a level of structure for commerce.
Yeah.
And that's like, and when they seem to really care,
Mhm.
and from my understanding from people that I know that have worked with them in concert, whether it was with the Kings or with the Thorns, they said that they're legit. And I think that's a big, big deal. And I think that will go a long way to bolstering and uplifting the WNBA franchise. Like,
Yeah.
It is. I was talking to people up and down. I go, it will not shock me one bit that the Portland WNBA franchise sets the attendance record the first year.
Well, Danny, so I remember when the Fire were here, and it felt like even though they weren't successful from a wins losses standpoint.
They had one of the higher attendances in the
Yeah, that's what I
WNBA then.
thought.
They folded because financially they just weren't ready for that many teams, and the ownership did not have a taste for that yet.
Yeah.
You know, it's just it was a financial loss leader.
Yeah.
That's just what it was.
That's what it feels like. And so with that, and then what we've seen with the support of the Ducks and the Beavers women's basketball programs, and just women's sports history in Oregon overall. I mean, it feels like, and then you look at the Thorns and how well they're supported. Like
they're the most. I don't think people understand this. The Thorns are the most well-attended women's sports event in the world.
That's crazy to me.
Not in the country, not in the Northwest, the world.
That's so dope, but it's crazy.
Yeah, they're getting 20,000 a pop every single game.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, don't get me wrong, they've had some of the top players in women's soccer too, but they aren't like, this isn't Miami FC or LA Galaxy, where like you don't have the David Beckhams and the Leo Messis. Like they don't have this single, like Alex Morgan was here for a quick beat, but
right.
You know what I mean? She was overseas, but like, and they've got obviously, oh God, what's her name now? Sophie, who's just an absolute stud, but like, or Sophia, but like they don't have the generational world carrying monster that some of these MLS teams have had, that have like really buoyed their attendance and really uplifted them. They've done it from inside.
Yeah.
And it's like, and again, I think the Thorns and the Bethal family are going to seize on that and really push through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really dope to see. Okay. Pac-12. So I keep it 100. I went to a small Christian college, so I root for all the Oregon teams. Right?
Okay.
So I don't have a whatever. But it was tough to see, just because of the history of the Pac-12. It was really tough to see what happened. Right. What I see happening now, I actually root for even more. The fact that this was an organization, this was a conference that was like, it's done, right? It's holding and there's no more. And to see it now look like it's going to just at least pull itself up and be able to exist. Who knows how successful it'll be and how long it'll take them to be successful in comparisons to some of the larger conferences. But I'm so rooting for it, man.
Yeah, no, it was really interesting. So one of the first things Dusty and I ever did together was head down to Pac-12 Media Days in 2022, 3 days after USC and UCLA announced they were leaving. Oh boy!
Welcome to the radio show.
Boy, so we're down at LA Live with all, and it was awkward.
Yeah.
Awkward. Chip Kelly sits down and we're like, "How you doing, Chip?" He's like, "Well, everybody hates me today." Chip was great, by the way. Chip was so much fun for that conversation. Still one of my favorite conversations I've ever had in sports.
Yeah.
He started talking about how college football needs to become a socialist economy and tear down all the barriers, get rid of all of the conference, and just have a 140 team super conference.
Yeah, I remember the way you broke it down made sense though, B.
It really did. It was like, Chip might be onto something here, but he was so done with all of the nonsense. He just wanted to coach football, which is why he's the offensive coordinator at Ohio State now. He's just done with the way that football is changing.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley was a lot more buttoned up about the situation, as Lincoln is. But the other coaches, they were not thrilled, to say the least.
Yeah.
There were a couple that took some shots. And I think some of the pettiness is mostly done. I think for a couple of years it'll still exist, but yeah, the Pac-12 this is their Hail Mary, to use the football analogy. Is they're going to try to bring in, some of the Mountain West teams, bring in Fresno State, bring in Boise State, San Diego State,
Colorado
State, and then Tulane, Memphis, UNLV, and one other. There was another one added just I want to say last night or the night before.
Florida school or something?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But again, they're going to have some version of it. Will it work? I don't know. I look at it and I go, Washington State, they keep winning games. That absolute craziness that they had up at the Palouse the other night, or night before last. It was Friday night, yeah. But they went into the double overtime. You know, Oregon State goes out there and takes care of business against Purdue, and it's kind of funny. Oregon State's not a Big Ten team, and they're the first former Pac-12 team to get its win against the Big Ten. Yeah, it's dumb because my Trojans fell apart yesterday against Michigan, so they couldn't. Look, I'm wearing all black today in mourning. Okay,
I see you.
It's tough. It's tough. I said it on Twitter. I'm like, I will not let this game dictate the rest of my weekend. I will not let this game dictate the rest of my weekend, and I'm trying to not let it dictate the rest of my weekend. But it is firmly dictating how I feel the rest of the weekend. I've been like womp 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 all weekend long now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is very cool to see. Now, it won't have it'll be Pac-12 in name only.
Right.
You know, it's not going to have the same history. There's no USC, there's no Washington, there's no Oregon. You know, UCLA I'll just leave out because they don't really matter. There's no Stanford, there's no Cal, you know.
So that was what I'm gonna ask you. So like the little that I've read that I understand, Stanford and Cal are locked in. But could there be a potential of them getting out of there?
Yeah, and that's going to be the interesting thing. I from who I've talked to and what I believe, I think the ACC is going to lose their lawsuit, which means that teams are going to be able to leave the ACC.
Okay.
But I don't know if Stanford is going to look at the new Pac-12 and be like, yeah, that's the group, because we were going through this the other day on the radio. And Stanford wants to kind of associate itself with kind of higher level universities. And in the ACC, you have Duke, you have North Carolina, you have NC State. Like, it was NC State. It's like, yeah, it's a top agricultural school. Right. Like, you know, you have Georgia Tech, which Georgia Tech's like, I think it's like top 10 in public universities. You start going through like the ACC has some very, very high level institutions. The new Pac-12 would not. Like Boise State is ranked like 332nd. Fresno State was like 250. Like I went through each of them. It's like they're not bad schools,
right.
But they're not like top 50. Like the ACC is basically nothing but top 50 universities.
Yeah,
and that's something at Stanford. It's like we're Stanford, you know,
right.
You know, and rightfully so. They have like a $34 billion endowment.
Yeah,
because that's their educator. The people that they educate go out and start these VC companies that make millions and billions of dollars. Right. You know, they invent everything.
Yeah.
So Cal's the tricky one because there's a dark horse world where Cal just doesn't compete in athletics again.
Really?
As crazy as that sounds.
That's
an option on the board.
Wow.
Because they're so financially screwed. Because they're getting the money from UCLA. For leaving because the public school that left the state and went to the Big Ten.
Right.
UCLA is paying them, I think, $10 million a year. They're calling it Calimony. It's a great name.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But like, what is Cal competitive in anymore? Yeah. No, don't be wrong. They're undefeated right now in the ACC. It's hilarious. But it's like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
It's, you know, I would like to see Stanford and Cal kind of like come be like the anchors of the Pac-12 with Oregon State and Washington State.
Yeah.
It would probably lift the conference up a lot.
Yes.
But I don't know if I see it happening.
Yeah. And it almost feels like, you know, these are the schools that are a part of the new Pac-12 are really going to just have to work on just building themselves up. What makes sense to me, I don't know that it does a lot for name recognition, but what makes sense to me is to bring Hawaii in just because it makes sense, and then get your football program set, and then bring in Gonzaga for their basketball program, and then, you know, everybody just got to win, and you got to get some people to give you some money.
Basically, yeah, and that's the thing is like you bring in a Boise State who, look, that Boise State team went toe to toe with Oregon, and something goes their way, they win that game.
Yeah.
And that's they are consistently not just like a fun plucky team. Like they're a top 25 team in the country every single year in the middle of nowhere, Idaho.
Yeah.
Like they have got it done right. UNLV has become kind of the sleeping giant.
That's right. Yeah.
Las Vegas has kind of become the epicenter for sports in this country.
Right.
Even outside of gambling, like you've got the Aces, you've got the Golden Knights, you've got the Raiders.
You soon got the new NBA team.
LeBron's NBA team is going
Right.
to be there.
Right.
And then you've got Major League Baseball. Like they have everything.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, that means UNLV won't have a surface. Like, no, this is the tide that lifts all boats. Think of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles has the Dodgers. They have the Lakers. They have the Rams. They have the Chargers. And guess what? When USC is humming,
Mm-hmm.
USC is right there alongside the Lakers and Dodgers as one of the biggest brands in the country.
Right. Right.
If you rise to the top in those markets, you can be otherworldly. And now all of a sudden UNLV is like starting to show like, these donors are popping out of nowhere. It's because they want a piece of it because they realize how much money is in this now.
Right.
And so UNLV, they've got a good football team, which that's the thing that makes money, but also that UNLV basketball can be back in a heartbeat.
Right.
In a heartbeat. And it's like, why wouldn't you want to go there?
Yeah. And it sounds like conversations are being had, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, so you add Boise State, you add UNLV, you get a little bit of a lift. Oregon State pulls itself up by its bootstraps, so to speak. Washington State holds on and keeps building. Like, are they the best conference in the world? No. Yeah. But could they be like a really competitive, like have like 3-4 teams somehow in the top 25?
Yeah.
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 And I think that's a good place to be.
No doubt. No doubt. Okay. Most important conversation, part of the conversation, bro. What is it? A week away from Media Day?
Yeah. September 30th.
It's so, again, as I said early in the conversation, bro, it's so fun to be able to listen to you on Jacked Ramsays. It's also fun to I haven't, like, I'm not on Twitter like that, but it's
don't be.
Yeah, listen, it's fun to hear you guys talk about like the back and forth you have with cats on Twitter. Your relationship with the players seems so cool that you speak of when you've had players on. There's a lot obviously that people are struggling with because the team is in this rebuild mode for at least one more season that we know of for sure.
Yeah.
From your standpoint, like I'm just psyched for because I'm a Blazers fan. Like whoever puts the jersey on, I'm rocking with you.
Yeah.
But from your standpoint, man, what should we be excited about? What should we look for? I know that, bro, I know you know all the behind the scenes stuff. You do such a great job of saying, I know a bunch of stuff, but I can't say nothing. So
I'll tell you one right now. I've got a big announcement coming tomorrow night.
Word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Big announcement coming tomorrow night.
Okay.
That I think everybody will be very excited about.
That's what's up.
Yeah. It's something I've hinted at for the last couple of weeks. So there's news coming. Okay. And then as far as this season, they're not going to be good.
Right.
And then that's okay. Like it's going to sound weird, but it's intentional.
Right.
Because they need that guy.
Yeah.
And the organization can't and won't, and they shouldn't come out and say that they're not going to win games. But they're going to measure their wins in development. It's not going to be in wins. And it was like, oh God, well, if things go right, I can see them. No.
Right.
No, guys, no. Like, I get you want to have hope and you want to be like, yeah, but I'm like, no, because the but means they go over the threshold. And let's say they win 38 games. Other than in the moment, hey, they did better than they thought.
Right.
What does that do for you?
Right.
It doesn't set you up for the future. It doesn't even if Shaedon Sharpe turns into a all NBA player, you're still missing pieces. And you don't get those pieces unless you have opportunities. And those opportunities, when you're Portland, come in the draft.
Right.
So I wish there were other options, but this is the reason why I wanted the Trailblazers to trade CJ McCollum years ago.
Yeah.
This is the reason why I wanted them to make like real big holistic changes because they were up against it. And it was like, it wasn't because I thought CJ was a bad player. I never thought CJ was bad, And I look at this team now and I'm like, I grew up here and I watched this team growing up. And I care about it, but it's also like I have my thoughts and my opinions and my views on like how team building should work. And holistically looking around the league, you have an understanding of what works and what doesn't. And look, I feel like I know basketball better than most people. I understand players and coaches and schemes and how things work and don't work. And when I say I want them to do X, Y, and Z, it's because it's based on that. And I've had people like, oh, you're just saying that because you're friends with the front office. It's
Right.
like, yes, I know Joe Cronin. I have very, long, often conversations with him.
Yeah.
The same thing that I have with all of the players. I talk to the players regularly. I talk to the coaches regularly.
Mhm.
But it's because of those relationships. I understand what they want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, well, you're just saying this because you're friends with Joe. And it's like, no, I'm saying this because Joe is doing the thing that I wanted them to do for the last 7 years. And if he deviates from that,
Yeah.
then I'm going to get mad. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
the second if they start trying to push for wins,
Mhm.
then you're going to see me going, what are you doing?
Yes. Yeah.
You stripped it down.
Yeah.
Deal with the consequences. And the consequences are you have to crawl through the mile of crap
Mhm.
to come out the other side. You have to go full Shawshank.
Yeah.
You can't turn around and go back into prison.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
you're already knee deep, elbow deep in it. You got to get out to the other side. That's where freedom is.
Especially when you can see that there are great opportunities that will present themselves
Look,
in June.
Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Dylan Harper. There's a ton of high-end talent
Yeah.
coming into this draft.
Yeah.
And look, everybody's hoping for Cooper Flagg.
Mhm.
We can all say it with our chest.
Mhm.
He is a different prospect. I was talking to a GM a couple days ago,
Mhm.
and I was like, look, I have seen a lot of the best high school players in this country over the last 15 years that I've been doing this.
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone like Cooper Flagg do what he does without the ball.
Yeah.
He's not a pound the ball. Like you're like, man, I wish Cooper would do more. And then you look up, he's got 22 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 blocks.
Yeah.
And you're just like, when did that happen? And the crazy thing is he did this down at Team USA
Yes.
this summer in Vegas.
Yes.
I think he had in a quarter, if I remember right, he had 11.7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 blocks.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And it was just like against the best players in the country.
Yeah.
Hands down.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there going, and let me remind everybody, he is not 18 until December.
And everything that you hear about him, it sounds like he's got a good head on his shoulder. He's not one of those guys who's going to get in the league and then like just rest on his laurels. He's going to continue
He's
to
a
work.
maniac.
Yeah.
Which is funny because he's from Maine, but so I won't mention the other player, but I was talking to Ben Golliver, who was doing a profile on Cooper at Hoop Summit.
Yeah.
And there was, there's a bunch of other star players there. And every time Cooper did something and got attention, this other star player would kind of like, well, what about me? Well, what about me? Well, what about me? And you could just see there was jealousy.
Yeah.
Of him, and it wasn't just one. There was a couple of guys like they didn't like, but Cooper always deflected. Like he didn't want the attention, he didn't want the limelight.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was just a grinder, and you could see. And it's not that those other guys can't mature because they're 16, 17, 18 years old. They're kids. Like you, guess what? They're gonna be immature, but his maturity. It wasn't just mature for 16, 17, 18 years old, Klyph. It was mature for 25.
Yeah.
It was mature for 28. Like he's basketball-wise, he's a grown man. Like there's no doubt about that. But maturity-wise, he's already an adult. Like he gets like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you see these guys, there are guys that get it and guys that don't.
Yeah.
And the guys that get it earlier, they take off.
Yeah, because it's one less thing that they have to work on once they start their professional career.
Yep, and he gets it already, and that's the thing. Like beyond the talent, that's the thing where I'm like, that's why you want to tie your rope to him.
Yeah,
like that's who you want to be your anchor because you know that he's solid.
Yeah,
and it's not that he means that he's perfect, that he's this great person, or it's a maturity. Yeah. And he knows what needs to be done. Dame was this way.
Yes.
Dame got here day one. Boom. You knew like, oh, that's a franchise guy.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily always about talent. Now you have to have the talent that comes with it.
Right.
But Coop has that. And VJ Edgecombe, the Bahamanian kid who played with DeAndre Ayton at the qualifiers, who lit it up in the qualifiers. He was one of my favorites coming out of Hoop Summit. And over the last couple months, he has just taken off. And He's a lunatic in the best possible. He reminds me of more controlled Russell Westbrook.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he plays at 110 at all
Mhm.
times,
Mhm.
but I think his maturity is probably a little more advanced than Russ's was in his younger
At
years.
this stage of
Yeah.
his career, yeah, yeah. No, I love that. Okay, 2 more Blazers questions, let me
Yeah,
get
go.
um, as you describe, it's obvious to everybody what this upcoming Blazer season is about. Going through, I'd say probably the last couple of seasons, with especially with the younger players, do you think that they have an understanding and can focus on, all right, we're going to take this year to develop. We know we're not going to win a lot of games. And it's not that we're okay with that, but we
Mhm.
understand that there is a purpose. Do you
Yeah.
feel like they have been able to embrace that?
From the player side, there's always going to be a little bit of pushback,
Uh huh.
no matter what.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it from Anthony in
Yeah.
the exit interview,
Yeah.
and for everyone, everybody knows how tight I am with Ant.
Yeah.
But he gets it.
Hmm.
It's just he's 25 years old. He just had a kid.
Hmm.
He's got a contract coming up in 2 years. Like so, like everybody always wants to like, oh, you just put that stuff aside. Like, no, you don't. No one does.
Yeah.
No one does.
Yeah.
Not even the best players put it to the side.
Right.
You still you still have to take care of yours. You still have to worry about your earning window the same way everyone else does in their own lives.
Yes.
Like it's no different.
Yeah.
But Ant's not in a way of like forcing things or anything like that. And it's not just Ant; it's up and down the roster. Like Jeremy Grant.
Hmm.
Jeremy Grant hasn't played like a post-March game in like 3 years
Yeah.
because he's been shut down.
Yeah.
But JG just had a second kid.
Hmm.
But his contract status is under control. Like he knows the deal. Look, if like with the Lakers deal, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I've been told that it did not get as far as people think it did.
Okay.
But I will say this: if the Lakers give up 2 first-round picks, Jeremy will be a Laker.
Okay.
I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
But Jeremy's not in a matter of like forcing things right now.
Hmm.
He's not out here like I need to be traded.
Yeah.
No, from my understanding, there isn't a single player right now who's like I have to go.
Yeah.
Now, is there a sliding scale of how happy guys are? Yeah, absolutely. Robert Williams is coming off his another knee surgery. Do you think he's thrilled right now?
Yeah.
No, he's probably a little worried about like I'm 26 years old and like is this it for me kind of a deal?
Yeah.
I've got to go out and prove that I'm healthy.
Yeah.
Jeremy's probably the most comfortable of anyone right now because he has 4 more years and $120 million, right?
Right.
Like JG's in a great spot. Everybody else is kind of in some sort of flux. Jabari Walker, because he's a second round pick, he's going into a contract year.
That's right.
I love Bari.
Mhm.
Great dude.
Mhm.
But right now, he's outside of the rotation.
Yeah.
It's like, is he going to spend time in the G League?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, there's an understanding of that this is a business,
Mhm.
and the business requires development of the young guys, and that investing in development capital and not necessarily wins.
Mhm.
And this is I get killed for this, but this is where I go to bat for Chauncey Billups.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is Chauncey the best coach in basketball? No. But you know what he does? He has players who still play for them after losing 60 games.
Right.
And that is not an easy thing to do
Right.
in that world, man.
Yeah.
Like guys still go out and play hard.
Mhm.
And they've done it 2 years in a row. And that's after dealing with all of the stuff of Neil Olshey's firing and trading CJ and then trading Dame. Like
Yeah.
he has navigated the waters of motivation
Mhm.
about as good as you can. People are like, well, they lost by 60. It's like, yeah, well, they did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those have got to stop.
Right. Right.
But the whole idea of like understanding like what the deal is,
Mhm.
I feel like everyone understands it. And I think even that includes a newcomer like Denny.
Yeah.
The one who I think it's going to be hardest for
Mhm.
is Donovan Clingan.
Yeah.
Donovan Clingan has won back-to-back high school state titles
Right.
and back-to-back national titles in college basketball.
Right.
My man hasn't lost in 4 years. He's
Right.
going to lose more this year than he has in the last 4 years combined.
That's crazy. But the one thing he has going for him
Mhm.
is that he's playing behind DeAndre and he's playing behind potentially Rob. So it's like, bro, like, don't worry about it. You just getting your reps, get used to the NBA.
For him, it's about conditioning and getting used to the NBA game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think everybody, for the most part, understands where things are at right now.
I love it. Let me just, so this is, I said 2 more questions. So this is,
Yeah, no, it's okay.
this
Go.
is 1B. Shaden Sharp.
Mhm.
Absolutely my favorite Trailblazer right now, the guy I'm rooting for the most.
All right,
You
then I
know,
got something for you.
I'm on Brandon's baby Kobe. Like, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? I'm loving Shea.
I got something for you then.
Okay.
So the thing with Shea has always been his talent is otherworldly.
Right.
He was a late developer, obviously during COVID, so didn't play at Kentucky. So, and you got flashes of it in the last 2 years, and the injury shut him down.
Right.
My concern with Shaden, and I think this is a concern that was kind of held by other NBA observers, is like there's plenty of guys. The level of talent in the NBA, I don't think the average in just professional sports, I don't think people truly grasp how talented professional athletes truly are.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And there are guys who are so unbelievably talented
Mhm.
that they just coast.
Yeah.
Like they don't have to work or they don't work as hard as like Dame will tell you flat out that he is not the most talented.
Mhm.
But he does, and you see it,
Yeah.
outworks every other person out there.
Yeah.
Dame is a maniacal worker.
Yeah.
That is how a 6'2" point guard is successful in the NBA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, Dame, he's fast. He's not Chris Paul or Russell Westbrook fast.
Mhm.
He's not Chris Paul playmaking.
Mhm.
But so what he found was I can shoot this ball from 37 feet because I'm strong as hell.
Right.
And
Right.
so he's like, I'm going to be strong.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. He's like, go look at rookie Dame.
Yeah.
Go look at how he's built.
Yeah.
Now go look at late career Dame.
Yeah. Yeah. He put in the work.
He put on like 15, 20 pounds.
Yeah.
He's huge.
Mhm.
Like if you were stand next to Dame, you think because you see him next to other NBA players, he's small. Dame's
Oh,
built like a
he's bigger.
he's built like a running back.
Yeah, he's much bigger than you realize.
He's 205, 208 pounds. Like he's a truck.
Yeah.
You know? And then, but to say all that,
Mhm.
Shaden, everything just comes natural to him. And it wasn't that he didn't work.
Mhm.
There's just levels that you have to work at.
Mhm.
And so I've I talk to people who go down to the Rico Hines runs down in LA and the other runs in LA and then in Miami. And I hear about, oh, this player, they're really blowing up down here. This player's really blowing up, or this player's struggling. Like you kind of get an understanding of like what guys are going to look like, not even just here, but around the NBA. Like, it's why a lot of times when you hear other like national NBA players like, oh, it wasn't really a surprise that this player kind of took off because you hear about it during the summer. Like there's the summer workout videos where everybody looks good. And then there's the actual runs where we hear, this guy isn't looking too good, or, hey, no, this guy is popping.
Yeah.
And I hate doing this, but it's going to put pressure on him. But I've heard from more than a few people that Shea is turned up.
Yes, sir. Yes,
so he found the switch.
Yeah.
Now, does that carry over? I don't know. But more than a few people, and have nothing to do with the Trailblazers, like, no, Shaden's been doing some stuff this summer, man.
Yeah.
And then I heard from a few guys during they had an unofficial camp a couple weeks ago. I heard Shaden was putting in work. So Shaden is definitely a guy to watch this season, I think.
I'm so looking forward to it, man. Okay, last Blazers question.
Yeah.
And you sort of touched on it. It was one of the things that that I wonder. I think it's people. I hear people talking about are the Blazers gonna let Chauncey go? To me, what makes sense, he's in the final year of his contract. You just let him run out his contract. You let him play out his contract, right? Do you think that let's just say that they get the number 1 pick or the top 3 pick, and they get a player who they feel like, all right, this is the piece that we've been missing. If they need to make any tweaks to the roster, which they probably will do, I would imagine this season. Do you think that because of what Chauncey brings, which is what you talked about, being able to get people to buy in, which is we know it's huge.
To me, it's the single biggest thing outside of like that final like 5%.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking about like competing for an NBA title.
Yeah.
Like the Spoelstras of the world, like they have that extra little juice, the layer that, the ATOs, the fine film work, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like that, everyone's like, oh, you need somebody who does that. Like, no, first you need somebody who's going to get people to buy in organizationally to what you're doing. That is the number one thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you have a coach that can hold the attention of the players, to me, I feel like then if you have support staff, so if you have I often think about Phil Jackson for as celebrated as he's been as a head coach. He had Tex Winter.
Yeah, Tex is the one who came up with the triangle, and
That's
then
my
and then
point.
came up with it. He's the guy who brought the triangle to the Bulls.
Exactly,
He brings it
exactly.
from UCLA, and they get to implement it. And then you have Phil on the sideline going,
Right, right.
you know,
So question being, do you think will Chauncey be back?
it is a question I have posed to the Blazers front office,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and without going into what their answer was,
Uh-huh.
the answer they gave me was somewhat what I expected, and I think there is a world where he could come back. I think is a limited world
Mhm, mhm.
because you have to consider Chauncey didn't sign up to coach a young team.
Right, he said that.
Chauncey signed up to coach Damian Lillard.
He said that
Yeah.
very succinctly, yes. Yeah.
And here's the reason why. No coach in the NBA wants to coach kids.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, but that's part of the deal is development. It's like, no, when you get to the NBA, you're supposed to be developed enough.
Mhm.
And now that's a different conversation. I as far as like how much the NBA should be responsible for development, I'm more on the guys should stay in college and develop.
Yeah.
As opposed, which you can get paid for now, which makes that
right.
a lot more earning potential there.
Yeah.
But not to say that you can't develop in the NBA. I'm talking about having a better understanding of stuff. And because I think the G League Ignite, I don't think did anybody any favors. I don't think it did Scoot any favors. I don't think it did Ron Holland or Modest Buzelis in this draft any favor. Like I get the understanding was like, let's get these guys some money where they wouldn't have otherwise gotten it. And then let's get them some run. But I thought it was just a little, I think the process was flawed. Let's go that way. But coaches don't want to deal with all of the stuff of teaching a bunch of kids how to be pros on top of teaching them how to play basketball.
Yeah.
Because playing basketball at the NBA level is so different than playing basketball at any other level.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, they're different sports, man. Like it's the spacing, the speed, the schemes, the concepts. Like it's so, everyone's like, oh, you still have a basketball, still have a hoop, still 10 feet. It's like, yeah, everything else is different.
Mm-hmm.
Where in college, even at the best schools, you may play against one NBA player on another team. Yeah. And that dude might be the 14th player on a roster.
Right. Yeah.
You're playing against dudes every single night.
Yeah.
3 times a week.
Yeah.
And did you see what was the Washington Nationals rookie? Was it CJ Abrams? He got sent down to the minors because he was out at the club too late.
Wow.
He was out not until 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 3. He was out in the morning until 8 in the morning, the day of a game.
Yeah, that's not okay.
You know what I mean? Like, and what did the Major League Baseball club do?
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to go.
Yeah.
You know, in the NBA, you can't really do that.
No.
But like, you're foolish to think that those things don't happen in the NBA. Yeah. And look. The worst example of it right now is John Morant.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
You know what I mean? Like. Yeah. And that's a great basketball team with a great coach. Taylor Jenkins is a great coach. Right. Do you think he wants to deal with Jaws BS?
Right.
Like you have one of the best players in the NBA, but you also have one of the biggest problems in the NBA. Yeah. And it's like, now imagine if you have, and I'm not saying Scoot's this. I'm saying Scoot if he's the worst example of this. Mm-hmm. Imagine Scoot, who's not nearly as good as John Morant, if all of a sudden he became a problem.
Right.
Like. Now you're sitting there as Chauncey going,
while still having to coach 14 other players.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, that's why coaches don't want to deal with young guys. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. They like the idea of it. Like, oh, it'd be fun to have a nice young guy that I can mold. But like, when you get in a whole team of it and you know that you're going to lose 60 times and you're coaching like Brett Brown with the Philadelphia 76ers, the process Sixers, his coaching record is never going to be the same. He's probably never going to get a head coaching job ever again because he was associated with those teams.
Yeah.
And so asking a coach to deal with all of the mess of losing 55 plus times a season, managing egos, which comes with a job. Yeah. And don't get twisted. As much as I love these guys, when you make millions of dollars, egos are involved. It happens. There's varying levels to it, certainly. And I'll be honest, this locker room is about one of the best locker rooms I've ever been around. Like
I've heard that so often, bro.
These guys, they really are. They are good dudes.
Yeah.
Because I've been in some Blazers locker rooms where that wasn't the case.
You know, and again, do we credit this to Chauncey? Because remember, one of the things
to the front office too.
When they traded Dame, That was one of the things that people talked about. Dame has been for years, right?
Mhm.
Just and I've had an opportunity to meet him, so I know that it's true and it's
Yeah.
real. He's one of the best dudes to have in your locker room in the
Mhm.
entire league. So when they
He
traded him,
doesn't allow he doesn't allow the nonsense.
yeah, yeah. So
Like
the fact that the locker room is still cool
mhm.
says a lot.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, and that was part of the reason, they make a deal for Time Lord for Robert Williams and Malcolm Brogdon because they're
Yeah,
pros.
yeah,
JG is a pro.
yeah,
Ant is Dame's. I mean, Dame calls Ant or Ant calls Dame Unk. You
yeah,
know, what I mean, like that's big bro. Like that's
yeah.
and so Ant has a level of professionalism that kind of comes down from him. And Da, like as goofy as he can be, like he's still. And everybody's like, "Oh, the ice thing." It's like, look, man, let's stop with the ice.
Right, right, right. Yeah,
Like it's so dumb,
yeah,
but like even Da understands how to be a pro.
yeah.
That's the thing is that, and that's an organizational thing because organizationally they would not bring in a Kevin Porter Jr.
Mhm,
They would not bring in a Josh Giddey.
mhm,
They would not like players who Miles Bridges. They
mhm,
would not bring in whether regardless of where you sit on the legal outcome of investigations,
mhm.
they prioritize character.
Yeah,
And it's not to say that those guys can't be redeemed later in life or whatever, but they just don't go down that path.
yeah,
That is something that organizationally from the top down
yeah,
that they just won't do.
yeah.
And I think that's a thing that matters to them.
No doubt, no
But
doubt.
to come full circle on Chauncey, yes, there is a world where he could come back. I think it is a small, like finite percentage.
Mhm,
I
mhm,
think the most likely outcome is that there is a different coach, but that's not entirely a Blazers related thing
mhm.
and a Chauncey related thing as well.
Yeah, yeah. Danny, bro, I could talk to you for another hour, B. Listen, man,
Hey, man, I love it.
I once again, man, I can't say thank you enough for coming through and chopping it up on the podcast.
Anytime, brother.
Listen,
Love it.
I gotta make sure that people know all of the things that you're involved in. Let's start with the Patreon because that's one of the places where people can really, really support what you're doing.
Yeah, no, you can go to patreon.com/Jacked Ramsays. This week, I will be starting to pump out the player previews. And actually, the first one is on Shaden Sharp and how he can be better in year 3. I've been diving into his film and kind of watching what I saw in the first 32, 33 games last year and kind of what to expand on there. I'll have a bunch of those over the next 2 weeks as we get into media day. YouTube.com/Danny Marang. That's where you can find all of the Jacked Ramsays content. And then you can find the podcast wherever you get podcasts, even Google Podcasts if it still exists.
And then people can tap in with you every Monday through Friday, every day.
Yeah, Monday through Friday, every day, noon to 3 on 1080 The Fan. You can watch us on YouTube as well, the live stream, youtube.com/1080 AM The Fan. And then on social media, at Danny Marang everywhere except for on Instagram where it's at D Marang because somebody's still squatting on my handle. Monsters, man.
No doubt. Danny Marang, man. Once again, B, thank you so much for passing through, bro. I really, really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime, brother. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, man. Episode 170 of the Klyph Notes podcast available everywhere that you get your podcast. Remember, you can catch me every Saturday night, 8 to 10 p.m. on X-Ray FM. Welcome to the neighborhood. You can catch me every fourth Sunday with DJ Ambush, No Requests, live at the White Eagle Saloon. We're going to be doing the Monster Box comedy show at Alberta Street Pub this Monday, but you can tap with me everywhere at DJ Klyph, DJ KLYPH. Also, check me out DJ Klyph on Bands in Town so you get updated of every place that I'm going to be. Man, y'all tap in, subscribe, like. I always love when you say this. Like, subscribe, share. I don't know, you say a whole bunch of stuff.
Like, rate, review, share, subscribe, do all of the things.
There it is. There it is, man. So that we can continue to bring you great content, great conversations just like this, man. Listen, until we have an opportunity to do this again, y'all be blessed. Peace.